Bowling with the Pfaff.
Bowling with the Pfaff.
Are you ready?
Ready. Your bowling stories.
They found you.
They did.
Pfaff's all over.
Every week.
Bowling has picked back up again.
Live.
UW Whitewater.
There it is.
Why the fedora? Do I look good in it?
I think you look great in it.
I want to challenge Skylar Pence.
Mike Hatton.
I'm going to challenge Alec Keplinger.
Let's do this.
Roll 'em.
This is Bowling with the Pfaff.
Well, good Thursday afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bowling with the Pfaff, a platform for you to share your unique bowling story live on our channel. We have an interesting show today, perhaps a little different than the norm, but I like to kind of keep it fresh as much as I can. This is going to be not only part of Jeff's bowling story, but we're going to get into some of the current events going on locally, regionally, in the professional ranks. It'll be a good time. And a big thanks to those of you who are tuning in live. Maybe you're foregoing reruns of Matlock or soap operas since it's so early in the day, but I appreciate that. If you're watching on replay, then you didn't have to miss Matlock, and you get the benefit of this too, but appreciate it just the same. The main field is now set in Waterloo, Iowa for the PWBA Tour event out there, the PWBA Bowlers Journal Waterloo Open, where all but 3 of the pre-tournament qualifier participants are moving on. So here's what it looked like for those athletes who are getting into the main field. There's 18 of them, even though there were only 21 in the PTQ field. Jillian Lim of Malaysia averaged almost 224 for the 6 games to lead the PTQ. She's joined by these 17 others in the field. 4 of them, including Lim, are from Malaysia. Plainfield, Wisconsin's Nicole Klutenberg grabbed the 18th and final spot at minus 51, 12 pins ahead of Canada's Jade Cote. The main tournament starts tomorrow in earnest, and the finals are on Saturday, 6:30 p.m. Wisconsin time on Bowl TV. Here are this season's National Tour champions so far, as New Fen Wee of Singapore grabbed 2 of the 3 championships in Cleveland this past week. Stephanie Zavala of Downey, California, took the Cleveland Open on her birthday. Don't forget, we've got a merch store here, etsy.com/shop/bowlingwiththepfaff to get t-shirts and hoodies and support the channel that way. Also, our sponsors, Jerry's Score More Bowling Supply inside Wagner's Lanes. Give them a call, 715-559-1822 for everything bowling product and coaching related. Also, Visionary Video Hub, your full-service video production source in the Chippewa Valley, plus live streaming, podcasting, and voiceover. You can find out more at visionaryvideohub.com. And Chip Magnet Salsa, where you've got a great opportunity to get a fantastic deal on the best salsa out there. Hit this promo code when you check out on chipmagnetsalsa.com. It's BWTF2025. You get 25% off a 6-pack order, and there is no limit to that special. From our friends at Chip Magnet Salsa, Chip Magnet, raise your snack standards. And a big thank you to all of our sponsors for supporting Bowling with the Pfaff. I know Yvonne Bennett was excited about the afternoon show. She says, good afternoon, Pfaff and Jeff. A rare live opportunity for me this afternoon. Always good to chat with Yvonne, and equally as good to see you there in the live chat. Well, our guest today is one of the most accomplished PBA regional players of them all, and a USBC Hall of Famer, 5 USBC Eagles, 30 regional titles. And when he's not working his day job as a reporter or bowling or spending time with the love of his life, right? Susie Fever, as he calls her, he is writing for 11thframe.com, which is a site that you should check out, right? We always say buy the blog at 11thframe.com. Jeff Richgels says, you might not agree with me, but you can trust that what you get from me is me and nothing else. And I would vouch for that because I'm a subscriber. I've read it many times, and it is most definitely him and only him. We're calling this one Last Mast. Jeff, welcome to the show again.
Hey, Pfaff, it's great to be here.
Yeah.
Always watch.
Great to have you. You have been on once before, and like I said, this is going to take sort of a different tone because we've got some things to talk about that aren't necessarily in your bowling story, but I want to start with the Madison Area Scratch Tour. I happen to have the good fortune to get over to Schwegler's Parktown Lanes on my way back from PBA's All-Star Weekend and watched you bowl, watched some of the others bowl. And you mentioned that this was likely your last go in the Madison Area Scratch Tour. Is it?
Probably, yeah. I've cut back on just about everything. And last year I bowled a few. I actually won one, which was unbelievably early in the year. But this one was the year end, and it was 8 games. And I was up there practically leading actually early on. I had the front 9 the first game and I was 100 over after 2, and the cut only took like 170 over. And I was in the cut until the last 2 games, and my wrist just really gave out bad. And I'm just, if I can't bowl in the year end of the MAST, I'm not going to spend the time bowling in the little ones during the year, because that's the one with a lot of the added money. That's the long format. And then I don't have to donate to Derek anymore either in that tournament.
Sounds like a lot of you have been doing that.
Yeah, he's going to do some damage on the senior tour when he gets out there in, what is it now, like 6 years. But I don't know. I just have better things to do with my time than to be a ceremonial bowler and mostly donator. Stick to a few senior events in Iowa that I like, and a couple of things. If we have a Henry Hitter this year, that'll probably be a Henry Hitter memorial with Mark's tragic death. Then those sorts of things. But other than that, the bowling in these against these kids, I have better things to do with my time.
Yeah. Tell me, if this was indeed your last one, what kind of legacy do you hope you leave with those folks on that tour? And we were kind of chatting back and forth. You were telling me, not everybody knows about it, but there are a lot of guys around Wisconsin that come down for those. Maybe they don't come down every month, but enough of us have been there once or twice. I've bowled one. There's plenty of folks from Milwaukee who come over for them. We just don't have a lot of those scratch tours in our state. We've got really 2 as far as I can see.
Yeah, and it was a lot bigger when we went back to the 90s especially, and even the 2000s. There was a lot more guys coming from the Fox Valley and from La Crosse. Andy and Nick would occasionally come down, and a lot of Milwaukee guys, Northern Illinois guys, even some few from Iowa. And the singles especially have dropped off in the last few years, especially since the pandemic. The pandemic with Dane County's restrictions turned off a lot of guys. The MAST really struggled to survive. Dane County was obviously the harshest with the restrictions then, or the tightest, however you want to describe it. And but the doubles still go really strong. And I don't worry about legacy. I mean, if people look at the records, they can see how many I won. And I didn't bowl a lot of them when I was at my best. I think there was one year I won 3 and I only bowled 5 or 6, because I was bowling regionals then and so many other tournaments that I just didn't have time or a commitment to bowl all of them. And but that's great. I like it because it's always all my friends, all the guys I grew up with, the people I bowled with for the last few years. It's fun, local stuff. Have a beer, cross with your buddies, hopefully, and just have a good time. And even if I'm not bowling, I guarantee you'll see me at a few of them just hanging out and and cheering on friends and that. And there's nothing against the MAST and me not bowling. It's just me. It's just not fun to stink. And as I've said a few times in the last couple of years, if it wasn't for the 9 games with my team at nationals every year until I can get to 50 years and 100,000 pins, if I can, I would be completely 100% retired and would not be bowling at all, because it's just so hard to just even be close to what I once was with as bad as my wrist is. So, it's just that I do what I do. I try to have fun with the stuff I do bowl and try to do good for 9 games a year, which I didn't do this year. So hopefully next year will be better.
Yeah, for sure. I saw Trey Henriksmeyer jumping into the chat. Hello, Trey. He's as far as I'm
there, man.
I'm in Wisconsin again, back over by his folks in Two Rivers, it looks like, because he's winning that Willow Creek sweeper every time he bowls it.
I'll be writing his name more and more and more in the future, I'm sure, especially when it gets to tour time for him.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Is there a favorite moment that you think you've had in the Madison Area Scratch Tour? I know there have been many.
Oh,
We
yeah.
put up the graphic that, showed that you have more wins than anybody in this thing. So there has to be at least a few memorable
Yeah,
moments.
no, this is easy.
Yeah.
I beat Derek Oaf for the year-end title, and I can't remember if it was 15 or 16, but it was at Leisure Lanes in Monroe, and they put out I don't even remember what pattern is. I'd have to go look at my story from back then, but they were so hard. It was unbelievable. Low scoring. They were just brutal. And I beat him in the title match, and I think I had 250 against him. That was it, and that's solely because of who I beat. I think now it was a year end, and it was to beat him because no offense to Mark McDowell or Connie Schwegler or who I never really saw bowl when he was any good, because he was so old by the time I was up bowling. Derek is the best talent there's ever been in the Madison area USBC. If you argue that, you are ignorant, or you haven't seen him bowl. That's just flat out the truth. All you have to do is watch him bowl for a time, and you talk to guys like Chris Barnes, the story I did on Derek. As Barnes said, there aren't many people that he would say would be, a multiple time champion on tour if they'd gone out, and he put Derek in the category with John Janowitz. And if Derek has the time and the dedication to bowl the senior tour and wants to go spend that time away from people for $7,500 first, he is going to run those people over on a continuous basis, much like Janowitz has done, I think. He's a pleasure just to watch, and I've been fortunate enough to bowl a little doubles with him, city tournament team, and it's just I just marvel watching his game. And I've always said, if you put me at my absolute best when I was in my 20s and 30s, he's still better than me. And I know I've accomplished way more, but that's because I didn't have kids. I bowled regionals every weekend. I hooked up with better teams than he's ever bowled with at nationals, who helped me get what I got. And he's got the scarlet letter of being a Team USA member, so he's never going to be able to really bowl with guys that I did without really, messing things around. It's very hard in his situation to do that. And he's got 2 kids that are fantastic and a great wife. I know him. I follow the kids' athletic events. His girl's a studly little soccer player, and that's a life that he chose, and it's a great life, and more power to him. And it's amazing what he does part-time. But if he'd gone out on tour, I've written this many times, he would have been, in my opinion, probably a Hall of Famer at some point and won multiple double-digit titles. So, and I don't think there's a lot of people that know him that would argue with that know bowling. Chris Barnes is, like I said, my perfect example of one of the smartest bowlers in the history of bowling, and had no hesitation in saying that about Derek. So to beat him anytime you can beat, that's one of the few times I beat him, believe me. But that one was just extra special. So that's just one I remember. There was another one that was more funny. I won a doubles with Mike Nape, from Chicago.
Yeah.
And the reason I remember that one is we bowled Eric Fritton and who was his partner? I think it might have been Chad Kloss. And the left side was pretty soft, but the right side was too. It was in Rudes Lanes in DeForest, and this would have probably been the late 90s, early 2000s. And Mike, we got to the title match, and it was bracket, and we're going to bowl Eric and them. And Mike's, we were on the pair. I think it must have been a step ladder. We were on the pair, and they were the top seed. And we advanced, and we got to bowl on a pair. Mike knew exactly how we were going to play it. And he threw all his practice balls with a plastic ball at the 4-pin. And so his whole deal there, there weren't enough shots really to impact, I don't think, the ball reaction, but it definitely got to Eric. And the people in the back were just going, the buzz was hilarious. And I'm sitting like this going, oh, Mike, you don't have to do this in a MAST. And it was so Mike. It was just how Mike always was. He wanted to win, and it wasn't against the rules. So he was going to do it. And we did win that match by quite a bit. But, that was one of those where I was just like, oh, boy. God love Mike.
Yeah, he was a character. And I remember him being around at those regionals that we talked about last time you were on at Spectrum Lanes in Maple Grove, Minnesota. Yep. And yeah, we marveled at his game and how much he turned it. And yeah, he was a character back then for sure.
He can hardly walk now. His knees are so bad, and he's very heavy, of course, if you don't know him. Sure. And a couple months ago, I look up in the morning and I got a video of Mike shooting 869. Yes, it's on a house shot, but if you could see, I mean, he can barely walk to the line and he shoots 869.
Wow.
It was just what, 3 or 4 years ago, him and his son came within a whisker of winning the doubles at nationals, and Mike's elbow, he cannot straighten his right arm, and his knees are shot. When we first saw him, man, he threw the ball like Robert Smith kind of, and he went out on tour, and I thought, man, Mike could win if he gets it. And like his second or third week out there, he blew out his elbow, and that ended any tour career. And he's had the problems with that elbow forever, and he literally can't straighten his right arm. And he bowled with that all those years, with all the titles he won and the doubles we bowled, and one of my all-time best friends for sure.
Yeah, incredible bowler for sure. And geez, 869 with all to work through. Whew, that's incredible. It really is. So I had to reach out to somebody else in the Madison Area Scratch Tour to kind of get a little perspective, because you've seen enough of these. That's what I do. Jay Heinzelman told me, with his MAST and Peterson Classic retirements, I feel that because of the immense competitive spirit he has, there is no difference in his desire to win now than it was 45 years ago. So if he has diminished chances to win, why bother? He's done it all locally. He's done it all regionally, so many PBA regionals, and nationally as an Eagle winner. He says because of that competitive spirit, you are a guy that you always want to beat. He said that one of his MAST titles was against you at your home house, the now closed Village Lanes in Monona. Definitely an extra special feeling of accomplishment for that one. So a lot like you said about beating Derek, Jay's kind of got that feeling about that title that he has, that he had to get through you to get.
Yeah, I can see that, because everybody's on a tier. And, when I was coming up, I was trying to beat Rich Wonders and Daryl Mizell and guys like that, Don Cook. And I looked at them the way like Jay probably looked at me when I was at my best, and the way that when I went on in regionals, when I could bowl Pete and Leroy Bornhop and all the tour guys, there's always tiers until you're Belmo or EJ. And then there's no tier, then you're just trying to beat each other, as those two do all the time. But there's always somebody that is above you that you're always trying to get. And so, I take those compliments. I cherish those, because I know that feeling personally, and I appreciate that. Jay's a hell of a competitor, and he's done decent on bowling some PBA senior stuff in the last few years, and really tough player. He beat me more than once. And when that straighter shot played, boy, he's a tough guy to beat. And he nailed it too. I have dialed back the competitiveness only because of the lack of my skill. And they say when you don't get nervous when you're on the approach, when you don't care anymore, when you don't get and I don't anymore, really. And without that juice, I call it juice when I try to talk to people, I don't have the juice anymore when I bowl. And that's why you bowl. I didn't bowl for money. I mean, the money's great, don't get me wrong, I made plenty, but I mean, you bowled for the juice, for the competition, for the chance to win. The best thing besides winning was finishing second, because you felt that juice all the way through, and that feeling, and I don't get that anymore, because I'm never in that position. I get it a little at nationals, but 483 in team this year was anti-juice, and really was a pummeling. But there's lots of reasons that explain that whole situation in my life, and that's not going to happen again, hopefully till I'm about 75 or 80. So but Jay nails it there. If you're a competitor like that, the hardest thing in the world is to know that you could do something once and you can't do it anymore, and still to keep trying. And I'm sick of trying when it's not there.
Yeah. One of those guys who I'm guessing might at least have a couple drips of that juice left in the tank is Mark McDowell. He had 795 at nationals, and it was funny because you guys were posting about that as I was watching a stream where Larry Lickstein was doing some play-by-play and announcing as he does at Lightning Strikes Bowl in Florida, and he happened to bring up McDowell because he was talking about the Excalibur, and McDowell was one of the first to throw it on TV. So I mentioned, hey, he just shot 795 at nationals, and he was, beside himself. Wow, that's so awesome, and all that good stuff. What was that like to see?
That was one of the thrills of my Open Championships career. And I'm not getting an eagle out of that, but that was as much fun as any of the eagles we won. Mark and I, for those who don't know, we met when we were 10 years old at Village Lanes. We grew up together. We bowled against each other, for sodas and later for other stuff, and then went on tour together. And of course, my wrist drove me off, and he became a Player of the Year and should be, a borderline PBA Hall of Famer. A couple more titles, and he would have probably had a chance to get in. But then retired, family again, real job, like a lot of guys have done. And then because of that, we were able to build our team in the late 90s. And, I've shared more thrills on the lanes with him and the other guys on our 11thframe.com team. And that day, it had been such a hard weekend with everything going on. And I had such a bad team event and let the guys down. And Gail also had a tough team event. And then doubles were okay. We had a couple guys bowl good. But to have something great come out of that, to sit there and then he shoots 299 that first game of singles, and they were so wet dry and tricky, and he just used his athleticism and he's my age. He's 2.5 months older than me, and he's in fantastic physical shape still. He can throw the ball 20 miles an hour without a problem, and was doing it that day. And I can't throw it 14 without a problem. And it was just awesome to watch. And at 299, he wants 300 so bad because his dad had one, and then I joke, hey, we still got 2 games left. You can still do it. Totally a joke, not thinking that, and then the next game, a couple bad things happened, a solid 8, a couple splits, kind of needed to make a ball change earlier when he made it, strikes out, saves 196. And I'm looking around and I'm going, well, he could still get some good money out of this though, high finish. But he's not going to shoot 300 and take the lead because the guy had shot 793 2 days before, whatever, the day before maybe it was. And I had to write it that morning, I think it was, before we came over there. And, he got like the first 4 after switching to the Venom Shock. And I said to, I think it was to Gail, I said, he could do this. That look is there. He gets some breaks, and sure as hell, we get there and 10th frame, and I sat down right, he's on 14, I think it was, and I'm sitting in the 3rd chair right behind him. And I'm not lying, my hands were shaking. I felt that like it was me doing that. Yeah. And there's a lot more at stake here, like with the Hall of Fame and the rules changes and the fact that he's not in, that sometimes I wonder if it's who I am for USBC that is partly responsible for that. I wonder about that occasionally. But if he gets another 1 or 2, they can't keep him out. It would be a travesty if they did. It already is. He should be in. But to get this 3rd one and have it be a singles, that would just be tremendous. And also that 300 with his dad. And that reaction when he got that strike to just jump, I just jumped out of the chair and I just ran and hugged him. It was just, I still get goosebumps thinking about it right now because it was just, I was shaking. And it was such a high. It was amazing. It was just, we've won, I don't know, I got 5 eagles and they all were fantastic and fun and everything, but that was as emotional and a moment I've ever had. And I had no bowling part of it. So it was one of the coolest things. The fact that we have to wait till July 28th to get the damn video is another ridiculous absurdity by USBC, but whatever. I'll get it. Brian will get it posted on my YouTube page, 11th Frame YouTube page, as soon as I send it to him from when I get it from USBC.
Yeah. And that's got to beg the question for folks who maybe aren't from this area, and you see yet another Wisconsinite doing great things at the Open Championships. What is so special about Wisconsin that we have so many great performances out of our players?
It was without a doubt that ABC, American Bowling Congress, was headquartered here for, 1930 something to 2008 or whatever it was. And that just built the ethos that American Bowling Congress was ours. It was important. The tournament was important. Team bowling was important. And it just was a culture that grew here. And when I was growing up, I mean, obviously the PBA Tour was a big thing, but it was about, I want to go bowl the ABC tournament. I mean, it was a big deal here. And I listened, and this is not against them, but guys like Big Mike on Sweep the Rack, they don't even care about the ABC tournament. It's just another. No, it's just, and that's not against them or anyone elsewhere. That's just explaining why it's so big to Wisconsin, because it was everything when I was growing up. That's what we talked about. And the tour the ABC was something everyone can do. If you got to be a good scratch bowler, you could hook up with other guys. You could go out there and have success and maybe win. Only a handful of people are ever going to get on the tour. So you think about the ABC before you thought about the tour, and some of us get to do both, thankfully. But that was what it was about then for us. And it wasn't until I started meeting people from elsewhere and they didn't think it was a big deal. And I would be like, what? Yeah. You don't care about Eagles and that? It just, not that I was thinking that they were, I just couldn't believe that everyone didn't see it the way that we all saw it, because that's what I grew up with. And obviously other places didn't grow up like that. And I mean, that's where it all came from. And so I'm hoping that guys like, Trey and Braden Malish and, Luke Winter is another, there's Robert Bader, all these guys. I hope that they're able to see how big a tournament that is and find a way to get together. Now, a lot of them are going to have the various PBA cards and Team USA stuff and that it's going to prevent them maybe from necessarily getting on the exact same team, but maybe building groups that can work together and do some of the things that we did.
Yeah, that would be cool to see that that streak of skill and incredible performances live on in the next generation for sure. Yvonne says the bowling culture in Wisconsin is just special. The players who help and support others, the proprietors who make it possible to thrive. And
she's not from here. She's
right. She's not
a Wisconsin. She's from the nation's capital area, USBC. I think a Hall of Famer there, if I'm not mistaken. So her perspective on Wisconsin is from an outsider moving here for work and then seeing how it is here, and her experiences were formed elsewhere and seeing how different we are. And that's true. I mean, I want to beat the other, the Travers, the Lenny, Dave Barris, whoever. We always wanted to beat them, but if we couldn't beat them, I wanted them to win over other people. And that's the way I described it, is that you want to see your guys win. It makes you look bad. It's just like if the Badgers, for example, which they weren't going to win the college football playoff. And it comes down to it. If it's Ohio State and Alabama, I cheer against Ohio State almost every week of the year, being a Badger alum. But if it's Ohio State against Georgia or Alabama, I'm cheering for Ohio State. Now, I know a lot of people don't think that way, but I would rather have the Big Ten win than anybody else. If it's not Wisconsin, I don't care if it's Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. They're my guy then. They're my team then. If I'm acting as a fan, not covering something. So that's the way I look at it. So I'm always pulling for Wisconsin people to do great when if we're not.
Yeah. Another former guest in the chat, Irish Pogie, says, "Hi, Jeff. Hope you're doing well." And he says, "I am jealous I'm not in Wisconsin." Another East Coast guy.
Have you ever had him on?
I have. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. With all the videos.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember watching that one on a recording.
Yeah. He was a great interview, and check out that YouTube page for those who haven't seen it yet. he's got some great gems on there from the PBA Tour and LPBT and all that good stuff. Yvonne says, it was evident when we moved here in 94, starting at league at Gary Darashevsky Center Classic Greenfield and elsewhere around Milwaukee. And yeah, that's a great place to start because you've got Gary and Traber and Barris, they're all down there. Gus Yanaris and Chad Kloss. I mean, that's the hub, right?
Yeah, it was a special time to grow up in Wisconsin with all the tournaments we had when I was a teenager, and the Bowling with the Champs, the state match games that Gloria Bear ran for years, all the Wisconsin Non-Pro Bowlers Alliance. I mean, there was something to bowl every weekend except maybe July. From mid-August until June. It was quite a culture to grow up in.
Yeah. Now, I saw you mention on social that you would have been in Waterloo with the PWBA Tour this weekend if not for the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. And I wanted to kind of give a little recognition to those folks because I haven't really talked about it much, but Rob Shue is, he's the one that stands out to me. Probably for a lot of folks. I bowled against his brother in college, and he was just one of those gold standard guys that went to Saginaw and had a lot of success and then kept piling it on after. But is there anything that I guess that you could say about Rob and the others that we should kind of pay attention to?
Well, Rob and I had a few tussles on the lanes through the years, lefty against righty in the old Wisconsin Scratch Bowlers Tour and the MAST. Some heated battles, right-handed against left-handed, and good times, but I always respected him as a bowler. And when Mike Shady moved to Pennsylvania, to Erie, to his wife's hometown, Rob ended up being the guy that ended up on our 11thframe.com team. We weren't 11thframe.com back then, obviously. Right. But he became our anchor guy in place of Shady. And you can go look at the story I wrote about him, his induction, and he's got like 2,100 or better. It was like 13 times in the state tournament or something. I mean, every year. And he had 300 up there this year. And he's another guy that if he has an eagle, but doesn't bowl much. He quit bowling nationals. I mean, he's got a great company, runs like when my house gets pummeled in Florida with a hurricane, his crews are down there. They repair power lines in that. Always joking about that. And his wife's a pharmacist, I believe, and they got kids that just like Derek, involved in athletics and everything. So Rob pretty much quit bowling, and we got him to bowl state. I've tried many times to get him if he was interested in going to nationals with us, and he's not. But we have a great time bowling state with him every year. I can't wait for Saturday night. I just was texting with him today about McDowell and his wife are coming down, and Susie's going to make her first foray out into public since her breast cancer surgeries. And we're looking for a really good time Saturday night for sure. And looking forward to some of the other ones. We've had a dearth of women inductees in recent years for a variety of reasons. The age limits, all the women had already got in, and the age limit for the combined Hall of Fame was much higher. So there were a lot of women that would have been candidates to get in, but they were already in because of the women. So we had to wait till some people got older and the numbers evened out. But we got a couple on superior performance. And then I nominated Maureen Harris. She got into Madison this year, unfortunately, a couple of years after she died, a year and a half, I think. This will be 2 years for state after she had died. But one of Wisconsin's all-time greats who moved out of here in the, I want to say 79, something like that. In that time she moved, but she was PWBA, finished second in the Queens. PWBA, one of the best bowlers on the tour in the early 70s on the PWBA tour, what there was of it then. So it was great to see her going in. And then of course, Krista Hildebrand, Don's wife, kind of the power behind the throne, would you say? I'm sure Don may have a few things to say about, he got all the glory and she did a lot of the work, perhaps will be her speech. Maybe, I don't know. But I'm looking forward to the night. It's going to be real fun. The Wisconsin Bowling Hall of Fame is always a great time. And I for sure would have gone to to Waterloo, being that it's so close, and I could get a free room at the Isle of Capri there. And
Well,
and I always like seeing the women or the men bowl whenever I get a chance. And get retired from the newspaper, I'm going to have a lot more chances.
yeah, for
Hopefully
sure.
yours.
For sure.
But I can't control the timing, so I got to go to I'm on the Wisconsin Bowling Hall of Fame committee. I got to be there,
Yep.
especially with a teammate going in.
For sure. Yeah. Irish Pogie says, I pray for healing for Susie Fever. I met.
She's doing great.
Good.
She's for those who don't know, breast cancer, and we went out to visit my brother in Phoenix for 4 days. He's doing not well with cancer himself. Unfortunately, still hope, like Lenny Borish. Lenny's beat all the predictions for his, and we hope that for my brother. But it was a tough 4 days, and he's still hanging in there, and hopefully he will keep hanging in there. But we came home, and she had a routine mammogram a week or so later, and as soon as she had it, it was like a couple days later, you need to come in, or you need to do a little deeper test. And she came in, and then it was like, we have a biopsy scheduled for Friday. And so in a week or 10 days, it went from a routine mammogram to you have breast cancer. And it was like, it just floored us. And of course, at that point, we didn't really know how serious it was. And the good thing is, it's turned out is that there's no spread as far as they can tell. It was just one mass removed. And she's pretty much in the recovery stage, and she has to have radiation. That's coming up starting later this month. And then she'll be on some meds, pills for, I'm not sure how long, if it's permanent or what, but they said those two things together, goes from a 14% chance of reoccurrence in 10 years to only 3%. And my line is, we probably at our age have more than a 3% chance of dying in the next 10 years anyway. Just from the math of, if you're 60 something in the next 10 years, don't you think 3% of people are like 61, 62 are dead in the next 10 years? Probably. So basically, that's a sick way of working it, but that's the way I'm trying to look at it positively, that
Sure.
this if you don't get a mammogram, ladies out there, do it. She wouldn't have got that. This was one, actually, they told her they caught it, but this was one that was very aggressive. And we got really lucky. In fact, her mammogram was delayed because she was supposed to be on a certain day, and something happened and they had to postpone it. And the fortunate thing is, if it had been done then, a few months ago, it might not have seen it. And then if it was an annual thing, by the time they saw it, several months from now, it would have been an annual, might have been too late.
Jeez.
So hopefully it all, things worked in our favor and her favor. And she's got an excellent prognosis. And so hopefully it's just one of the many things we've had. This has been a really, really brutal year for us, with elderly parents also that we have to help out a lot on. And, Bella's she's over 12 now, and she's had a couple emergency vet trips, and selling the house in Florida, and we've had so much stuff going on in our lives. So we're hoping we get through this year a little more, and things will calm down a little.
Yeah, I like that, and I like that. She needs to be strong enough to hit the casinos and walk away with lots of dough.
I took her last. This will be her first public bowling thing this Saturday, but we did a trip to Hard Rock in Rockford. There, people saw the posts, and based on this free play thing that I'd won, and I put it up on my Facebook, and we had a good time. And that was really the first night that that she'd gotten out of the house for anything other than appointments and taking care of her dad. That was the other thing she's been doing. So who's now in assisted living, but it was good. So she's well on the way to recovery, and this radiation is probably going to knock her back a little. And it's a harsh thing to go through, but it's necessary. And once she gets by that, sometime in July, then hopefully it's smooth sailing. She can get some strength back and start driving again. I've had to do all the driving, and she's usually the one that does all the driving, so I can write and everything. But she's been just one-armed basically since her surgery. So I've been the one doing all the driving.
Okay. Well, best to her, whether it's for driving or anything else. We're certainly pulling for her. next month is also a big month for Wisconsin, right? You've got the PWBA Tour and Junior Gold coming to Green Bay and Weston, which is near Wausau. How big a deal is that to have Junior Gold in our state? I feel like it travels around a little bit, but it's never really been right here, right?
Yeah, based on the number of lanes they need, there are really only, I think, 5, 6, 7 really municipal areas. I mean, it's actually regions of states to get enough big bowling centers that can have it. I think Vegas can do it, Dallas can do it, Indianapolis, Cleveland, and they've made Green Bay do it using the Fox Valley and using Weston and Wausau. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of driving, but every year Grand Rapids, Michigan did it too. And they had a lot of driving too, because they had to basically it was a Western Michigan event. I think probably Detroit could do it too and has, but you need so many lanes for 4,000 bowlers. Taking the U22 out, it's reduced it a little bit, and maybe that's why Wisconsin was able to fit in. But yeah, that's a big deal. It's interesting. I did it. Let me get this sheet of paper here.
Sure.
I did a chart here the other day trying to figure out my schedule. I make it a point to try to watch every TV show, PBA, PWBA, major junior events, and write about them after watching them. And like this weekend, I'm totally screwed because we've got PBA Tour finals Saturday and Sunday, Women's Tour Saturday, and USBC Senior Masters Sunday. And I mean, I don't know when we're going to get back Sunday. Some of it I'm not going to get to watch, so my stories are not going to be as good as a lot of them have been. But if you go to July, there are shows July 3rd, 5th, and 7th. That's PBA 60 World Series. Then the PBA 50 World Series is July, I think it's 11, 13, 15, 17, and 19. And there also is July 13th is one of the, I don't even know which one that is, but then, oh yeah, that's the PWBA anniversary, 10th anniversary, the huge one in Green Bay at the Rush Center. Yeah. And you've got all the Junior Gold stuff going on then too. And then in August, there's the PWBA series, August 7th, 9th, and 12th. And the 9th also has the PBA 50 Tournament of Champions. And there's some other ones later in July too. So there's all these conflicting and on top of each other things. And I really am planning to go to the PWA 10th anniversary show at the Rush Center, but it's on at the same time as a PBA 50 World Series show. So now I'm trying to figure out how am I going to do this? And I got Monday off at work. So I'm thinking if I go up there, then if I come back and then I'll watch the other show in the morning. If I don't stay overnight, I can come back and do that. And then I get about 2 hours of sleep, watch the other show, get them all written on Monday. It's like, because I wanted to go and do the flavor, go up earlier. They're taping the USA Bowling National Championships on CBS Sports Network. They're taping those during the day Sunday, and then the show is 6 p.m., the live show for the women. Okay. And there may be at the Rush Center 8, 9, 10,000 people with all the Junior Gold kids. And that's just going to be such an event. If they break the Detroit, it was the U.S. Open, I think, was in Detroit that had 7,500 people there. And that's the biggest crowd that's ever been at a show. So they may break that record. And I just wanted to write a scene setter in that, and not realizing that the PBA 50 World Series is going on at the same time with shows on the 11th, 13th, 15th. So, and also I was thinking, well, I can get the flavor also of the day before where they make the show and write a good story, but that's on Friday morning. Weird schedule.
Yeah.
They have that Friday morning. I'm sure it's to do with all the Junior Gold stuff. Coming to town, and they have to have practice sessions and all that stuff. So I'm sure that plays into it, but they get done like at noon or so on Friday. And so I'm like, okay, do I take Friday off work and then just to get those 6 games? And then what am I going to do the rest of the day, Friday and all day Saturday? Right. I got to go back home and then drive back up. And so that was unfortunate because I was hoping that it would be Saturday night would be the end of and even Sunday during the day would be the end of to set the TV show, and I could get that story and get that, all in-person interviews and all that kind of stuff, and then get the flavor of all the people at the rec center. So I'm really at a loss here.
Yeah.
I want to go so bad, but that may really impact what I do with the PBA 50 World Series. So
Sure.
just too much going on.
There really is. Yeah. And I'm hoping to get over there, but I've got a challenge myself. I've got a family wedding in Chicago that Saturday night. Got Mrs.
We
Pfeff.
can hit it on the way home.
She's not exactly bowling's number one fan. I take most of the responsibility for that. So it might be challenging for me to get there, but I'm hoping to at least get to junior gold at some point. Like I said,
I've done junior gold. I've been down once in Chicago. I've seen it. I haven't done a TV show day. But I've done flavors like the year that there was all the chaos in Chicago. I went down during that by coincidence, and it's a spectacle. It's crazy, the number of bowlers and everything. I mean, it's just insane. It's if you're a bowling fan, you should see it and experience it at least once when it's anywhere near where you live, because it's an amazing thing to see. And and we've had the Wisconsin ties there too. Anna Callan winning one of the titles a few years ago, and it's an amazing, and seeing those junior gold kids every year. Somebody you see there in a couple of years, there they are. This Jillian Martin, and we'll have now the Caitlin Stoll is one that's done great in those, and we're going to be seeing her winning tour events, and just so many of those great young bowlers, men and women, and they're on those shows, and then a couple years later on the PBA and PWBA. So no doubt you're getting to see the next stars before they're stars, or as they're becoming stars, and it's just fun to see. And I'm just jealous because we didn't have any of that when I was a kid. We had nothing. When I was a youth bowler, we had our city tournament, our state tournament, and the Pepsi or the Coke. I don't even remember which it was in the 70s, so long ago. And I went to men's leagues before my 16th birthday, men's competition, because there was nothing to bowl in. It was just league and 2 or 3 tournaments a year. If there had been scholarship events, smart events, junior gold, when I was that age, I wouldn't have gone to men's leagues when I was that young. But there was nothing to bowl in, and I wanted to compete.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes total sense. Across the state, we are seeing more and more string pin setters. And I know that you've been very detailed and very consistent with calling them either certified or carnival string pin setters. We are getting more of the certified ones. Sussex Bowl just announced this week that they have them up and running. We are going to have one about an hour north of me in Chautauqua. Which is an interesting situation. They have a 9-pin no-tap tournament every year that draws just tons and tons of players from Minnesota, from Wisconsin, Illinois, all over. I actually did get in there to take a look at construction, and we're going to be live from up there actually late next month. Cool. But tell me about, your thoughts on this, because it's something that, again, Wisconsin hasn't seen, and now little pockets of this are popping up in centers across the state.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've written story after story, probably at least 20 stories, maybe 15 or 20 stories, depending how you categorize them all. And haven't changed any opinion that I've had from my first experience with certified when I was down working on the house in Florida in 2023. And I took a drive down to Naples one afternoon and saw the one pair of lanes they'd converted at that center. And then, I've seen them obviously elsewhere since then. If given the choice, I would always bowl on free fall. Sure. But times are coming where your choice will be to bowl on strings or not bowl. And carnival strings, forget it. I wouldn't have anything to do with it. And I'm saying this as if I was still a competitive bowler. So, if I was still a competitive bowler and there was a MAST tournament in a string center that was certified strings, wouldn't hesitate a bit to bowl in it. Everybody's bowling on it. From what I've seen, you can go look at the YouTube ones. There have been of the PBA 50 regional that was there, PBA regionals, other tournaments. There are things that happen that don't happen in free fall. String occasionally will knock a pin over, but I could show you 10,000 videos of absurd things that happen. Pins sliding across the deck with free fall, pins going down and coming back on the deck and standing up. That happened to Bill O'Neill famously in the World Championships in the Middle East one year. Famous video. Those things happen all the time. 4-2-1 head pin forward, or 6-3-1 if you're lefty. The rip trip 2 pins that happen all the time. There is so much abnormal or unfair, inequitable pinfall or not pinfall in free fall, I think, more than you see in strings. So I don't want to hear that. I'm so sick of that. That's because I every time someone sends me one of these videos where someone like leaves a ring in 10 and it slides over to the 4 pin or the 7 pin and stands up. Yeah. And I would say, but strings, I'll share it, and pardon me, my computer, I'll share it, say, but strings, because you're focused on a thing that happens less in strings, but it's something you've never seen before, versus all this crazy stuff that happens with free fall all the time that we just accept because we've seen it a million times. I believe, carefully to say this, that certified string bowling is in a sense more pure than free fall, because you get way less messengers. You got to be a real animal to get a messenger on strings to get it, because they don't come off the sidewall anywhere near as much. And you got to throw the ball more flush on strings than you do because of the lack of shaking pinfall. You have to be more precise on strings than you do on free fall. And I think that in that sense, it levels the playing field between the two-handers and super high rev one-handers and the straighter lower rev guys, because accuracy comes into play. Scores are generally lower on strings because of these factors. And that, again, levels the playing field a little more to the straighter player, which is why I find it so ironic that the people that are the biggest against strings tend to be the older, get off my lawn types who don't have as many revs and go straighter and would actually benefit to bowl against your two-handed guys on strings. They would have a better chance. That's the most ironic thing about this. But they've never bowled on them. They're not going to bowl on them. Don't tell me about these, probably because they've seen videos on YouTube of carnival strings with truly crazy things happening that no one should ever experience in any competitive sense. And again, I've written this too. More credit to Chad Murphy for this than anything he's done in his tenure. I'm his biggest critic probably in the entire world. I will clap for the rest of time for how he handled this situation when he saw it coming. He got USBC on the bandwagon. We need to get on top of this. We need to figure out how to certify this and how to standardize this in a way that takes as much of this away as possible. And they did it. USBC did it. If USBC had not done that and created certified strings, all these centers that are putting in strings would be putting in carnival strings, and bowling would be in a really, really bad situation, because then you would be creating a environment that is not anywhere near free fall and true bowling. And the certified string bowling is close enough to free fall bowling that I would have no hesitation competing in it against. But carnival stuff, I would have no part of it. Don't want to see it. And luckily, thanks to Chad and USBC, give him all the credit in the world for that. I'm his biggest critic, but I'll cheer for him on that. I think he might have saved the sport of bowling with that action, because it's going to take a long time. People that think strings are going to take over in 5 years, it's not physically possible. I've been told they can only really convert at maximum 40, 50, 60 centers a year. Because mostly that's going to happen in the summer, and that's just the number of manpower, the production they have. Now, obviously, maybe I heard that last year, the last time I talked to someone, they can build up production and get train more people, but you're not going to convert 3,000 centers or even 1,500 of them in 5 years. It's going to take 20, 30 years to really get it. And it's going to take, there's a lot of proprietors that are never going to do that. Yep. Because they have a good enough business. They can afford a trained mechanic. 6-12 lane center can't. Your Shatek, they can't. I wrote a big story with Stephen Hainan Stephen Hainan with Sussex and their other center, Foxview, in suburban Milwaukee, after they converted. And it was an economic thing for them, and it made all the sense in the world. And he was just one of the guys that saw the future and the economics of it and took the chance. And, a lot of bowlers, he lost some. I wrote the story. He was real honest about it. But, there are going to be more and more like him. And thank God they've got certified strings to do that with, when the alternative probably would, there just aren't many people that were going to bowl in competition on uncertified strings. So those centers would have been choosing between either being in a terrible situation, not having mechanics and, having the machines go down all the time and the costs of all that, or closing, or putting in something that the sport has no part in. And that's not good for anyone. So we've at least got something that will keep the little centers like Shatek and the centers in, say an area like Milwaukee that might not be able to afford to stay free fall. They have an option now.
Yeah. Good stuff. Recently, we've also had some controversy, I guess you could say, in the college game, where you've had two premier programs, right? Premier women's programs, Weber International, Stephen F. Austin, both dropped those programs. That's got to change the landscape, not only the perception, but also in competition when you have those two juggernauts just not in it anymore.
Yeah, it's it's hard. Now they're very different situations because Stephen F. Austin is I'm pretty sure a public school, part of the University of Texas system, much like, I guess you would sort of make it similar to a Whitewater or Platteville or Oshkosh, Eau Claire, UW system schools. And Weber's a private school. So very different situations, but both of them were economics. And the ironic thing is, I think that bowling is the only program that either of those schools have ever won national titles in. And they got rid of they still have the men's bowling at Weber. And it was the women's bowling program at Stephen F. Austin that won national titles. So that's the irony, is they're getting rid of their little schools like this, their most successful programs. But the economics are the economics. And a lot of people have talked about how the NCAA changes with the House case settlement once that goes, and next year places like the University of Wisconsin and Michigan and the SEC, all the power schools, they're going to be paying athletes directly in, say, football, basketball. Obviously there'll be other sports where some will. This Texas Tech pitcher, if you've seen this, she got $1 million to transfer from UCLA, the softball pitcher.
Oh wow! And
carrying Texas Tech to a softball College World Series. So you'll see that kind of stuff. But the good thing, and there's a lot of fear that, like at Wisconsin and some of these schools, will there be enough money to keep the non-revenue sports alive? Will some have to be cut? Some schools are going to be cutting. I think some have already announced cuts of lesser sports. So the good thing that bowling has is that most of bowling's NCAA programs are not power schools, Power 5, or now it's Power 4 schools. The exceptions are Vanderbilt and Nebraska. And both of them are Big Ten and SEC. They are going to have enough money, hopefully, to keep those programs going, especially considering the success stories they are in their women's sports, but also with the effective demise with the Trump administration of Title IX. Do you think that the Trump administration is going to be suing anyone over Title IX if they cut women's sports? Not happening. I don't think. So I think that a lot of schools can cut them and without fear of federal intervention. So that may push it along. But all the when you go to Jacksonville State, they started the program. They never won a national title in anything, I don't believe. Now they got a couple. Schools like that, those are high profile programs at those schools for the most part. But there's only 38 maybe NCAA girls women's programs. Even just losing a few of those starts making it hard for in their Division 1 and 2. There's not enough there that if just a few losses really cut into your. So it's an iffy situation, but I don't think it's as as dire as some think when they look at what's happening to college sports, because I think the big changes coming to the high level of college sports mostly don't impact bowling because we're not in the high level. You know, that the only Big Ten school with a real NCAA bowling program is Nebraska. The only SEC is Vanderbilt. I don't think there's any Big 12s, and I don't think there's any ACC. So all the other ones are smaller schools. I don't know how much the whole house case and all that's really going to impact them. We'll just have to see. I mean, who knows? And in the positive side, if you saw, and I haven't written this story yet, I got it half written, hoping to finish it tonight. The NAIA voted to follow. They took away the restrictions on prize winnings, and they said every sport would follow the national governing body's rules for that sport. USBC doesn't have any rules. If you bowl in a USBC collegiate program, you can win a high roller for $200,000 if there was such a thing. Sure. You can win the US Open for $100,000. They don't care. It's USBC doesn't. That's why a lot of men's bowling programs are not NAIA. They are USBC collegiate only. As soon as this passed, which was just recently, Mount Mercy, if you saw it, announced on Facebook that they were going to be an NAIA program next year.
I can see that. I
expect to see more of that. Got to get this story done. I started it last night, didn't finish it before we had to collapse in bed. So that could be a positive, I think, that would help boost NAIA by more schools that are USBC collegiate. And then they can compete for 2 titles, I believe. They can bowl ITC and they can bowl in the NAIA championships, and no difference in rules because they're just going to follow USBC collegiate's rules.
Yeah.
So that's a positive side. Now, I don't know how much that will affect women because most of the premier women's programs are NCAA, and which I saw when I went down in February and watched the NCAA tournament that was at Strike and Spare in Lockport, compared to seeing a USBC collegiate women's college competition that used to be, like at Schwegler's, and seeing that NCAA one, because all the top women bowlers are NCAA pretty much. And watching them was like, whoa, these, I was like, holy cow, it's a different level of competition.
Yeah, for sure. See, this is the byproduct of, of coming on in July and having an afternoon show. You get my 12-year-old saying that his best buddy says hi live in the chat because, what else are they going to do? School's out for the summer now.
That's right.
So, the one other thing that I wanted to kind of try and wrap my arms around is this whole TV rights thing with the PBA. Of course, last week we learned about the CBS extension that will encompass the World Series of Bowling, the World Championships to be on CBS, big CBS. The CW announcement before that for 10 events live, same week, same time, all that good stuff. But there's still so much that we've got to know. We haven't seen a schedule. We don't know exactly when these shows are going to be on. We don't know the exact makeup of what it's going to look like and who's going to announce and all that other stuff. What should we be looking for?
Well, I think you can logically parse it out pretty easily when you figure, okay, CBS, you've got the World Series taken care of. You've got your major, you've got your World Series, and then there's going to be a PBA Tour Finals that is sort of going to be more like a real tour stop with not just the top 8 eligible. So you've got 2 premier competitions there taken care of. So those are off. I would expect that Tour Finals is going to sort of replace the playoffs in a sense. I don't see we know that CW's deal is 10 straight Sundays in a 2-hour window. It's going to be the same 2-hour window every week. Right. And I would not expect that my theory on this is that they would start that either most likely the weekend between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl. And then they'll start that. Then they'll never go directly against the NFL. If they say go noon to 2 Central Time, 1 to 3 on the coast, or maybe it'll be 1 to 3 Central, 2 to 4 on the East, and then noon on the West Coast. whatever. It'll be something like that, early afternoons on Sundays, and it'll be before the Super Bowl. So you'll never compete with the NFL. You'll go 10 straight weeks on Sundays. That gets you through all of February, all of March. You get to early April. You've bowled 10 straight tournaments. Then you've got time for CBS to do the World Series, probably right after the Masters, I would assume. Like the World Series, it's the lead-ups are going on, and then maybe the first show would be the Monday night after the Masters if they choose to do the shows on weeknights. We don't know that.
Right.
And then the World Championship maybe is the next Saturday or something like that. I don't know. We don't know that exactly what they're going to do, but I would expect that to follow, and then the PBA Tour Finals to be after the World Series, and then you're wrapped up. If they don't add any more networks or any more streaming or anything like that, you're wrapped up with the Tour Finals ending the tour in late April, early May, perhaps, and you're done. Now that leaves us what is going to be in these 10 weeks. Well, you got 4 other majors. So are you're going to hold those? I'm sure you're going to have those. You're going to have your premier events. Now, how much money Bolero is kind of going to be choosing that, because I don't think CW is paying rights fees like Fox was. I'm sure they're not, but maybe they are. I don't know. We don't know. Nothing's been announced, but hopefully Bolero will step up to the plate. If you believe what some say, Bolero is the reason that the Fox deal was lost, because they overreached and asked too much, and Fox said no. Maybe that's the truth. I've heard that, and I've heard other things too. So I don't know exactly what the truth is. That seems plausible, and that happens in negotiations. Obviously, if that is what happened, Fox didn't really care that much about the PBA, and they did get the live deal. I thought there was room in the world for both to exist on Fox, but maybe not. And so maybe Fox just, who knows how it went. But if PBA said, hey, we're producing all these numbers for you, and they've been pretty good, can we get more? And Fox said, nah, forget it. We don't want you then, or whatever, however it went, something like that. But if it went like that, then that says Fox really didn't think as highly as the PBA as they did. Because then we said, oh no, well, how about for this? And there would have been more of a negotiation. And I think if there had been more of a negotiation, I can't believe Bolero would say, nope, here's a line in the sand and we're going to walk away from you. Right. I just, maybe, I don't know. That company is kind of a disaster. Perhaps they're that dumb. I do know, for anybody, do not blame Tom Clark, please. Tom Clark runs the bowling side of the PBA. He does not run the business side of the PBA. That doesn't mean they don't listen to him, but he's not the one in there. He negotiated with Fox. It was him to get the original Fox deal that existed when Bolero bought the PBA. Bolero runs the business side since, and I assume it was Lev Exter was the one, the president of Bolero, was the one negotiating with Fox. But Tom doesn't do the business side. It wasn't his fault that the Fox deal is gone. And I'm sure that if it had been up to him, he would have done anything necessary to keep it on Fox, because he knew the value of all those network shows. But anyway, so let's say those other 4 majors are in those 10 weeks. So then we maybe have the doubles and maybe 3 or 4 classic events that we had in the past. Who knows what CW, I would think, would want to put their own stamp on things and maybe come up with a few things. Sure. Who knows? Is there room for a PBA league in there? Maybe a battle of the brands or something. In an ideal world, wouldn't they take one of the tournaments and have it at Bayside? If they will have a PBA playoffs that ends the CW part of the thing, and they'll have the shows at Bayside. The PBA has to go back to Bayside. This can't be forever. Or you have a battle of the brands again, and you just let the brands pick the players for each team. You don't have all this stuff leading up to it, or you do have it leading up to it. But don't you have to get that show back to Bayside? You have to. Yeah. I mean, come on. Everyone knows that. Tom knows that. It has to happen. So hopefully we'll see it back there. If you want to do a whole real big, huge PBA league with lots of shows, then you're going to have to find streaming or Bowl, wildcard Bowl TV. Well, they have some events later in the year that are Bowl TV only. Maybe there's 10,000 for first, 20,000. Will Bolero put up the money? I don't know. It would be great because that's the biggest thing. Basically, the PBA Tour is over for this year. We've got the finals this week for a few guys. You've got the Lucky Larson and the Lucy mixed doubles. Otherwise, there's no PBA until next January or February. So would it be better to have Bull TV have some events in the fall or something, even if they were 10 or 15,000 first prize like the senior tour? I know if I was trying to do that for a living, that's better than, I guess, bowling regionals or running a pro shop, or I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see. There's so many, as you said, so many unanswered questions here. I can't wait to hear the answers. I'm not trying to push on this because I know this is going to take time to figure out. They have to decide, is there going to be a tour trials?
Yeah.
Are they going to have exempt fields? What does CW, how much does CW care what leads up to their product that's on TV? Do they want step ladder finals? Maybe they have this whole other vision. I don't know. So at some point, I'm going to ask Tom, hey, let's sit down and do a hour-long Q&A focused on, but it's not worth doing that until you know more. I don't want to get on there and say, well, I don't know. I can't comment on that. That's not a story anyone wants to read. So, and there's months and months and months to let this play out and see what it is. And, and you also have these things that Fox really loved, which was like the NASCAR bowlers on there, the Strike Derby, all those fun events, the PBA LBC National Championship show. That is there room for that? Who knows? We don't know on any of that, and there's much more to learn.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Sure. And to Tom's credit, when I asked him, hey, come on the show and start explaining this, he said, well, we've got a couple more shows to do. Let's, I'll do it, but give it some time. And that benefits the viewers out there as well. So there's that. And on the CW end, I did send an email about that long with, tons of questions. So, maybe
Did they respond to you?
Nope. No response.
Yeah.
So hopefully we find out sooner than later. But yeah, like you said, these things take time. Will Welch says, hi, gents. Thanks for tuning in, Will.
I really believe that a lot of this is not fully fleshed out yet.
Yeah.
That because you can make these TV contracts and just say, okay, here's the windows you have now. What are you going to put in there? And then you figure out what you're going to put in there, because you can't really do the rest of the stuff until you know what you have to work with for TV. You're not going to create a tour and spend all this time sketching it out and not know if or when you have TV. You have to get the TV windows, then you figure out what you're putting in there.
Sure.
And so the wild card is, how much does Tom and Bolero, how much does CW care? Or do they just say, give us a product on these windows, you tell it, you know this best, and then they can create. And if Tom and Bolero have an open canvas, what will they do? Will they do anything we haven't seen? Who knows? It'll be interesting, but certainly you got to have 4 majors. So, of those 10 weeks, you're going to have a US Open, you're going to have a Players Championship, you're going to have a Tournament of Champions, and the USBC Masters will have to fit in there somewhere too. And likely, like I said, late January to early April makes the perfect sense. 10 straight Sundays, noon to 2, 1 to 3 in the center of the country. To me, that's kind of writes itself.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Keeps it away from football, which I think we all want, at least those of us who like them both and want to see them both. All right. I've kept you for more than an hour. Let's try this before we call it a day.
Let's go off the sheet. Challenge a bowler to appear on a future episode.
I would like to challenge Will Madison.
I would say Diana Zavulova.
The better Russo, Lauren Russo.
We're looking for anyone who has a passion for the sport and a unique story to tell.
Jeff, I think you're the only one in the history of this show to challenge someone affectionately called Satan. Satan never came. He never reached out. And
He's shy.
Okay. That's okay. Not for everybody. And people have a change of heart on that thing too. So I've had people tell me no, 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 and then appear on the show a year later. But let's say things hold serve. Satan doesn't want to come and show himself on on Bowling with the Fef. Do you have someone else you'd like to challenge?
Well, yeah, I think you haven't had Mark on, have
No.
you? No, I mean, it's so logical. He, no offense to Satan, he has a much more broad story to tell from bowling for a college national championship with arguably the greatest college team in history, certainly one of them, and losing to Mike Shady and Bill Fabian's UW lacrosse team because of a crazy format that no longer exists. Bowling this whole tournament to get there, and then they bowled one game for the title. Imagine that. That's just insane. Bowling best out of sevens and then one game. And then going on tour, rookie of the year, bowler of the year, BWAA. Ferraro got the player of the year, but winning the Firestone, and then leaving the tour, and our team. And remember, he was the president of the PBA when things were starting on the downhill slide as ABC started declining. I'll let something out of the bag here. I had about an hour-long interview with Mark Gerberick last week, and we talked a lot about it was like what PBA is going through now, and we talked a lot about what happened with the TV contracts and then the sale of the PBA back then. Sort of just a history lesson for people who don't remember that, and getting some opinions from Mark on what PBA is going through now. So I'm hoping to get that one written by the 4th of July. Depending how things go, but it was really extensive. I got to transcribe it, a lot of fact checking, and I have to go back to him. But anyway, Mark was at a front row seat to that because he was the president of the PBA board of directors. Then he was on the board. So it's funny. There's all the confidentiality, and we never really talked about a lot of the stuff back then. And then it just kind of dropped by the wayside. And now I feel like Saturday, after talking to Gerberick, I'm going to talk to him about, some of this stuff that now he can talk about. That's, 3 ownership changes away and all that. But, and then all this, and then of course you have this sitting there, 795 leading the singles, which he would agree. When we were done, he said, well, I know that's not going to hold. And I said that in my interview, or I'm going to say that in my interview, and it's held. This is not catting. I still think it's going to get beat, but every day that goes by is one step closer to it surviving, and we've had leads that we were certain were going to hold. 2 team all events. One of them, I still to this day can't believe got beat. The other one, it lasted so long that at some point I started thinking, wow, maybe this is going to win. And then their doubles in 2009, him and Shades led the doubles from early April until late June, and they ended up second, and they got beat by Brenda Edwards and Stephen Padilla, and they had the all-time highest score ever and beat him by 100.
Yeah.
And I'll never remember driving home from the regional, and Matt Canizero called me while I'm driving home from, I think it was Council Bluffs. I'm driving home the phone. Oh, Matt's calling. And I answer, and he goes, I got some bad news for you. And I'm just like, I drove off I-80. I was so floored with what they shot, because at that point I thought, man, that's going to win. And if those 2 guys had that, they might be in the Hall of Fame already. That's the smallest margins, and the two seconds in team all events that I thought we both would. If those won, we'd all be in the Hall of Fame then. Because these margins can happen so small. So, but we've also won occasionally with numbers that I didn't think would win. So, maybe, but it wouldn't surprise me if I woke up tomorrow and somebody had 820.
Yeah.
Because they're soft, but they're tricky soft because they really change fast. If we low rev guys like us can change them as fast as we were changing them, then I can't imagine what guys with a lot of hand do to them. And they're 6 on a pair. So 6 on a pair changes the lanes a lot more over doubles and singles than 4 on a pair does.
Yep.
So you can have that. I mean, we started playing the outside 5 and we were playing inside 15 at the end almost. So it, that move with 6 people is really dramatic versus 4. So, you can't win if you don't take the lead, and he still has the lead. So who knows? I'm not going to get really crossing the fingers hopeful until you get to July. And that's a long ways off still. and there's all these tour guys still to bowl. But
Mhm.
EJ 775, he made a run at it. Rash is bowled, but there's still a lot of guys. I don't know how many of them are going to bowl, but guys like Chris Vi, who bowls every year, and he's won all events and that. But again, you gotta 795 is a big number, and if they change a lot and they're tricky carry wise, there's some bad racks on some of those lanes, so maybe you wait, and I don't know if you want to wait to have him pass the 58th on the chance he wins, or you want to talk to him about it and see what he thinks now. I'm going to see him Saturday, so I'm curious to see what he thinks after having led for a month.
Yeah. Well, I'd say, by virtue of the fact that I'm pretty much booked until the end of July,
Perfect.
We'd have to wait. Is he in Black River now?
Yeah, and heck, you could have him on in person.
I was going to say, I wouldn't be opposed to driving the 45 minutes down there and
He
doing.
bowls at Neilsville.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he bowls league in Neilsville.
That's a little farther than 45. It's
it is. It's down towards Lacrosse then, probably. Okay.
No, it's down to Osseo and then over two-lane highway.
I honest to God, when he told me where he's bowling, I said, I have no idea where. I've lived in Wisconsin my whole life. I know where, from being a journalist and reporter with covering, I know where just about everywhere is. Never heard of Neilsville. I have to be honest.
Okay.
So
it's pretty much the biggest city in Clark County. For whatever that's worth.
He's very happy up there close to you. He's got a really beautiful house on some great land on a golf course. You come down there in his living room or something and do it there. And if you can keep all the dogs, they have enough dogs, it might be a little difficult.
Okay.
But I think even if he gets beat, there's so much to talk about with him, and still USBC Hall of Fame. If the rules can change again, they had that veterans category, and he's got a better record. The veterans is where you can add your USBC and PBA records together, and he's got more than the last 4 or 5 guys that have been put in the veterans. The Bob Learn and Harry Sullins and those guys that have gotten in. He deserves to be in. It's a shame that he's not in, and he never got to be on the veterans ballot because the rule is, as long as you get a certain number of votes on that superior performance or USBC category ballot, then you don't move you to the veterans. That's what it was when I was on there. So he never actually got to be on it, and now they got rid of the veterans category. So
okay,
it's kind of a catch-22 for him. But if he gets the 3rd eagle, when eventually they're going to have to drop it from 4 eagles, I believe, because they're just going to run out of. They won't have anybody to put in. There's so few people. 4 is so hard to get. I've explained that in the numbers. Eric Hartman did a lot of the research. So I think they'll go down to 3 eventually.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Mark, if you see this and you're willing to come on.
Oh, he'll be willing.
I think I would be willing to even go to Neilsville if that's what it took.
That would be awesome. The guy that owns they would love that.
Yeah, if there is suitable internet there, and we're not talking like the dead of winter where you're driving on Highway 10 like this. Yeah, I'd do that. So, Mark, there you go. The ball is in your court.
Yeah, he's got such a. You could have him on for 5 hours going back to talking college and then all those years on the PBA tour. He saw the glory. He was one of the stars of the glory days, and knows everybody. And he was at the center of a lot of the stuff that happened as the PBA began declining, and they were trying to salvage it. And Gerbrick talks about that in the story I'll have. So, and then our history. So he's seen it all, and he's still. I mean, that 795. Have you seen that video? You can tell he's still got it a lot more than I do, for sure.
Yeah, well, one of Wisconsin's best. Both of you are. All right. So the next live stream, I've got an interesting guest. That one's coming up on Monday. It's kind of a quick turn in my world. But the man who you referred to as the professor.
He is a professor.
Glenn Gerstner.
No, he is a professor.
He is a legit professor.
Yeah, he's a professor.
Well, he wrote a book on Andy Verapapa that I'm slowly making my way through.
Oh, fantastic book.
Yeah.
Fantastic book. If you love bowling history.
Yes.
I learned more about the history of bowling and what it was like at the top level, pre-PBA, pre-team era from that book than I have from anything else. There's so much so much stuff in there that you just don't, even someone like me didn't even know.
Okay.
It's a great book.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we'll talk a lot about that. And of course, his bowling story back at our usual time, 7 p.m. Central, Monday, June 9th. Hope you will be there to see it either live or on replay. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. I know we had a kind of a scheduling switch at the last minute, but I'm glad you were able to take the spot. This was great.
Anytime. Always enjoy the show, and occasionally I cobble quotes from you. So, and I have to say, I love the one you did, obviously with Belmo. I've got a couple things I want to add to stories for that. But that Kelly Whipple one was great. The whole quick trip thing, I had no idea about that, and that is so cool.
Yeah.
That's just the neatest thing ever. And so that made me go on. I have an Instagram account just to protect my name. I don't use it. I don't post. I just occasionally see stuff on there. And I went and looked at a bunch of that, and I was just laughing at that. More power to her. And that's the kind of thing, stuff like that is that gives bowling a chance to make it beyond bowling and into the mainstream more. So good job by her. You got to cheer for her to bowl well. Cheer for her to find success on the PWBA tour with the tie she has there. That could be a big breakthrough. Maybe Quick Trip says, hey, maybe we'll sponsor a PWBA stop.
Yeah, maybe. And, shout out to Chris Pulliam, who made that happen. He was encouraging me to have her on because she won that Future Stars Award from Bowl Forward. And I said, yeah, I'll have her on. And the next thing you know, in the inbox, just like that. So, yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed that. And I did too. But, no, good stuff. Everyone, thank you so much for watching us at this early time, and we will see you next week.
Thank you for watching Bowling with the Fef. Pound the like button and subscribe button. It's the easiest way to support the channel, and it's free. Bowling with the Fef is brought to you by Chip Magnet. Raise your snack standards.
Jerry's Score More Bowling Supply inside Wagner's Lane. So Eau Claire, Wisconsin area's leader in bowling products and services since 1988, and Visionary Video Hub, video with impact.
Email bowlingwiththefef@yahoo.com with questions or to appear on the show. You can also reach out on your favorite social media platform.